Okay, so this video is called, let me move the chair so you can see the board a little bit, it's called Absolutism. And this is the study of kings and queens through the 1500s and 1700s, people that had absolute control. So absolutism is the thought that kings and queens had complete and unrestricted power. They believed in this idea of the divine right of kings, which meant, or not all of them, but many of them did, thought that they received their power from God, so no one could question their authority. So the divine right of kings is super important here. To keep their power, the kings or queens, otherwise known as monarchs, took power away from the nobles who had traditionally run the government, used armies to gain more lands and more resources and more riches, and appointed bureaucrats that took kind of over for the nobles and they would do the king's business. And these people were appointed by the king and always typically sided with the king. That's how they got their job. Okay. So let's look at how kings and queens got stronger. So lots of countries had monarchs during this time, during the 1500s, 1600s, and 1700s, and even outside of that, but that was the traditional time period of the monarchs. But not all the monarchs had absolute control, so we need to make sure we're talking about absolute monarchs, ones that had complete control of their government. So how did they get their power? Well, the Age of Exploration, that first unit we did, made the monarchs stronger by bringing in all this money, and that was the idea of mercantilism, and also expanding their kingdoms through colonization, which was the second unit we did, the Age of Colonization. So mercantilism, if you come down here, is by definition, wealth of nation depends on the possessions, meaning money, land, and resources that come in. So you do need to know that mercantilism is really how the monarchs gain a lot of their power. They just become so rich and so profitable that they're able to control the government that way. For example here, Spain's king, Philip II, super important. Because he gained a lot of resource and made Spain super powerful at that time. He didn't lose power until the end of Age of Exploration, really, with the Sir Francis Drake battle with England that we talked about earlier on. So Spain was incredibly powerful under him. Also, this idea that philosophers had by Thomas Hobbes believed people needed one sovereign ruler to keep everyone safe. So people gave up certain freedoms to ensure peace, order, and security in society, meaning that people would have a better life if they let one person be in charge, that absolute monarch, that king, that queen. So who are the absolute monarchs? Let's just kind of blow through a few of them here. I've got 6 that I want you to know. King Louis XIV is probably the most famous one. He is kind of the face of monarchs, if you will. He was from France. He ruled for 72 years, 1643 to 1715. Known as the Sun King, made France kind of the center of European power at the time, both culturally, socially, politically, and then created a honey lodge into an amazing palace called the Palace of Versailles. So that was a huge accomplishment he had. Peter the Great from Russia, known as a Tsar, ruled from 1682 to 1725, really worked to westernize Russia and catch them up to date with a lot of the other European countries like France and Spain and England. Really expanded Russia's territory and made them into a modern society, like I mentioned. Frederick the Great from Prussia. All right, he ruled Prussia, which is kind of modern-day Germany, if you will, from 1740 to 1786. Really strengthened their economy, was a very strong military leader. Make sure you know it's Frederick the Great. There are a lot of Fredericks in Prussian's history, a lot of Fredericks that ruled. Henry VIII from England. He is a super interesting guy. He had 6 wives. And just a really interesting guy. You should read a lot about him. Ruled from 1509 to 1547. He created the Church of England after the Catholic Church refused to give him a divorce, so he made his own church. So he could then get a divorce from his wife. So he was a little bit on the crazy side, but did create a new Church of England, which was super important. All right, let's look at Catherine the Great from Russia. She was an empress from 1762 to 1796. Notice we had Prussia and Russia. Those are 2 different places, right? Longest ruling female in Russian history and made efforts in social reforms. Some people consider this time of Catherine's ruling to be the golden age of Russia. Charles V, he kind of ruled Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands, ruled 1516 to 1556. He supported Catholicism and really helped to advance Spain during the time of exploration and colonization.